Ladies and gentlemen, Season 2 Reloaded is officially here for Modern Warfare 2. Yesterday, we got the whole Season 2 Reloaded update, as well as the raid. And I put up a full walkthrough of the raid, which was my full first playthrough of it. It was a lot of fun, and here's what I will say about the raids. This is all I will say. I'm really glad that these have been added into the game. It is a great addition. They are a lot of fun with limited replayability. They do add multiple rewards for completing it multiple times, which I think is good. But once you beat this once, you kind of get the gist of it, and your reward is essentially the cutscene at the very end, which was a very, very good cutscene. So they did a good job with that. Now, as far as raid number 2, this one was, in my opinion, a little bit easier than the first one, simply because the puzzles were easier and there was less AI than the first raid. But there's definitely still some tricks and some things that I can help you out with puzzle-wise to help you get through this raid easily if you haven't figured out how to do it already. So that is what this video is going to be. I'm going to go through and give you a complete easy guide on how to complete raid number 2 for Season 2 Reloaded. Basically, this is just called raid episode 2, Atomgrad. So without further ado, we're going to dive into it, and I'm going to break down every individual part of the raid so you can do it as easily as possible. So essentially, at the beginning of this raid, the entire point of this one is to get to the top of the missile silo and find the warhead. When you start out, you're going to start right where the first one left off, in the missile silo. And what you're going to do is start climbing up. There is a ladder right there, and you're going to very quickly learn that when you see little yellow ledges, those you're going to hang on to and climb up. Once you climb up the first part, you're going to have to fight some AI throughout some vents. There is some air that blows out of vents that does do some damage to you, but not a lot, so don't even really worry about it. Just run through it when it is not there. So in the next section, you're going to get back into where the missile is, and then you have another climbing puzzle. This time, you're going to have to jump over a couple of pipes that are shooting air out of them. There is a valve that controls the air. When you close the valve off, the air switches to the second pipe, and when you open it, it is back on the first pipe. So basically what you need to do here is send one of your teammates through. You control the valve. When they get to the top, there's another valve at the top. Now be careful, because at the very top of this, there is a juggernaut that spawns in. Deal with it very quickly. The one thing that I haven't mentioned yet is make it so that everyone on your team is running the assault class, which has the armor box that you can drop on the ground, and just constantly drop them, kind of go through a cycle. One person drops it, the next person drops it, and you're just always going to have armor after every single fight you get into. Just make sure everyone's running that class. So after you get through this, you're going to get to your first jumping puzzle. You're going to want to learn how these work right at this point. Essentially, all three of your teammates are going to have to push a button at the exact same time. So just say 1, 2, 3, and on go, everyone pushes the button. Quickly, these vents are going to open that you have to jump on. Now, the key to these vents is only one person can stand on them at a time, and they also go down relatively quickly. So what you need to do is quickly, one at a time, hop across these vents. Basically, one person jumps to a vent. When they jump to the second vent, the second teammate jumps onto the first vent, so on and so forth, one at a time, and everyone gets across. Now, right after this, there is another puzzle that's a little bit more difficult, but the same thing. Only one person can stand on a vent at a time. So what you need to do in this one is everyone pushes the button at the same time and then start jumping across. When you get to a set point, you're going to want to look to your right. There's a vent that's going to open up under you. You're going to jump to that, climb up some pipes, and then continue jumping along the vents until you get to the very end, and this portion of the puzzle will be over at that point, essentially. Also, I should have mentioned this before, but if one person falls off, it's not a huge deal unless you're playing on veteran. Essentially, it just brings you back to the beginning. There's always a ladder that will take you back to the other side if one of your teammates have made it across. So this next section of the raid we will call the fighting climbing section. There's essentially two parts of it. You're working your way up some zip lines as well as fighting some AI at the same time. Make sure that when you pick up armor, you are dropping your armor that you have, your 3 plates, onto the ground, picking more armor up, and then you can store the armor that you dropped in your backpack just to give you a little bit of extra armor through a couple of more difficult sections. There is some juggernauts you have to fight. Just shoot them in the head. That's the easiest way to kill them. Pretty straightforward. Now, there is one section of this where as you're climbing up, you're going to hit a zip line and there is literally fire coming out of a pipe. There is a little wheel like we saw before that will turn this off, but for a very brief period of time. So make sure you kind of turn it, your teammate goes up the zip line, and then again at the top, there's another wheel that your team can control up there. But there are some bad guys that will shoot at them. So just make sure you kind of try to take them out and plan it out properly with your team. This brings us to our final jumping section of the raid. This one is the most difficult to figure out, but once you know it, it's actually one of the easier ones. So essentially what you're gonna do is press all the buttons, your team's gonna start jumping until you get to the end. You're going to notice this little fence thing down the middle and some vents are opening on the other side. If you are the first person, like I was, you're gonna go all the way to the edge of the fence. When the vent across from you on the other side opens, you are going to jump across, but not start moving the other way until everyone on your team also jumps across to their corresponding vent and then starts jumping the other way. Once again, you just want to go one at a time, slowly making your way. This one you do have to move a little bit faster, but just make sure you're waiting for your teammates because again, you can have only one person on a vent at a time. It's kind of difficult to figure this one out, but once you get it down, it's pretty easy. This next section is probably the hardest fighting section, but it's still not that hard. You have a flashlight on and you're working your way through some tunnels. There's going to be a bunch of enemies that get in your way. You're going to shoot them. You're going to take them out. If you have Molotovs or nades, use them at this point. You're going to be able to refuel them after, so don't worry about that. This is essentially the final section before you get to the last puzzle. So this is the hardest section of the raid to figure out, but once you have a good system down, it is relatively easy. Into this, you probably want to take a weapon with a larger magazine, so pick up an LMG because you're going to have to do some fighting and you don't want to reload much. But essentially what this is a maze that your team needs to help you get through. There are 3 different parts to the maze. There's the door, there's the gas, and then there is the fans. So when you are the person running through the maze, you are going to instruct your teammates to press certain terminals at certain times. The first 2 you're going to want to press together, which are the door and the gas. You want to press the gas a little bit before you press the door. When you press the gas button, gas vents out of the section that you have to run through, and when you press the door opens. Once you're inside, you're going to notice that there's some water on the ground with electricity in it. Just try to avoid those sections. If you hit them, it's not a big deal. There is a section in the middle where it's flooded and you have to jump across this top of stuff. Once you are at this section, you're going to tell your teammates to turn off the fans. If your teammates are on the first side, the middle fan will turn off. If your teammates are on the second side, the right fan will turn off. In other words, you just go through that fan and work your way through until you get to the final door. Instruct your teammates to open the doors and the door will open and you can get through to the other side. So there are 3 terminals on either side. The maze is down the middle. One person can run through at a time, and the order that you want to turn them off is turn the gas off, open the doors, turn the fans off, open the doors, and then the gas will go back into the chamber and you should be out of the maze at that point. As I mentioned, there are the 3 terminals on either side. So once one teammate is on one side, that person cannot go down, or essentially you can't save them, and that becomes a problem. Now, every time you vent the gas, enemies spawn in. So basically vent the gas, take out the enemies, turn the fans off, open the door. That's essentially what you want to do, one player at a time. Learn where the terminals are, learn what each of them does, and then execute appropriately. Now, once everyone is across, a bunch of enemies are going to spawn in, including a juggernaut. Take them out and then move to the final doorway. Now, when you open this door, this is the final section of the raid. Essentially, what happens is you go through this section and gas is moving in behind you. The pipes blow and you have to run down this hallway, killing enemies and getting towards the end. At one point, you're going to go up some stairs, and when you get there, you're going to want to breach charge the wall. This will give you access into the next section, which is kind of just some corridors where enemies are spawning. You're just going to fight your way through there until you get to the end. Now, when we played, 2 of us actually went down, but 1 person got to the end. They were actually able to go back in, revive us, and we were all able to get out to the final section. This is the end of the raid. Congratulations, you just completed it. So that is raid number 2. As I mentioned, this one is definitely easier than the first one. That last puzzle in the first raid is relatively difficult because you're constantly being attacked. This one is much easier. You just have to have some good communication, especially through that maze. As long as you can get that down, have a good way of communicating it. We just communicated it with doors, fans, and gas. Use those callouts, and it's relatively straightforward to get through all of this. So hopefully this was able to help you. If it did, hit the like button. Let me know what you think of the raid down in the comments. And if you've beat the raid, that cutscene at the end, yeah, we're going to be talking about that one later today. But until then, thanks for watching, and until next time, peace out.
We are reaching for the stars, but we're